Just to start, how many people have actually been to Tokyo? Whoa, okay. So that's good. So the crowd will know what I'm talking about. Great. 1 year ago when I was asked to give this talk for the Chicago Humanities Festival, the incoming governors of Ohio and Wisconsin had just refused federal funds to expand high-speed rail projects in those states. So for somebody who has lived in Tokyo and or lived in Japan with the convenience, the wonderful convenience of the train system there, to me that refusal just seemed somewhat insane. So I thought to use the opportunity today to talk a little bit about Japan's high-speed train system and basically use this as an opportunity to promote high-speed train systems in the United States. So today, that's one part of what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be talking about the high-speed train system. But I'm also going to be doing something else. And the second part of my talk is going to turn a little bit more to what my actual work does, looking at Japan's commuter train network. And I know I'm supposed to speak of the wonderful efficiency of it, of its ecological sensitivity. But what I'm actually going to be proposing is that Tokyo's commuter train network asks us to think about our relationship with technology and a global condition. So the talk is going to have two parts to it. Let's start first of all with the more wonderful, convenient aspect of Japan's train system. And for this, I want to take you back with me on a trip that I took, a flight I took last year from Chicago to St. Louis. I took a lot of flights, well, several flights last year. And the reason I want to use this flight is it just so happens that the distance from Chicago to St. Louis is 260 miles. And the distance from Tokyo to Osaka, and Osaka is Japan's second largest city for people who have been there. The distance between those two places is 251 miles. So I think this gives us a really good opportunity to compare what it's like to travel by flight in the United States and what it's like to travel by Shinkansen in Japan. Now, I don't think I need to spend too much time telling you what it's like to travel by flight in the United States, because I think this is something we all know and have learned pretty much to hate. So I'll just briefly go over some of the highlights of that experience that I think you'll all find resonance with. To start with, there's the insult of the $10 carry-on, $10 for carry-on luggage. And I don't know, are we expected not to go with luggage? Are we expected to buy things when we're there? I just never understood where that comes from. So that's the first part of this what's become the insult of travel by flight in the United States. Now, the second part is, of course, airport security. And this has become just another headache, another part of the burden of this entire trip. You know, the long lines, the panic of whether you're going to make your flight or not. And by the time you get through, you practically have to undress and redress and put on your shoes. And if you're not undressed, well, the machine undresses you anyways. So there's that aspect of it that's just become another aspect of the insult of travel. Let's see if I can advance here. Of the flights I took last year, I don't think a single one of them left on time. I mean, it's become a given that the flights are going to be delayed. And this particular flight to St. Louis was initially delayed an hour at the gate, and then we got on the airplane, then got off the airplane, then got back on the airplane, and then we taxied out to the runway. So by the time we actually left, it had been something like a 2 hour, 2.5 hour delay. So, but that's standard. I mean, we've come to accept that as just what travel means in the United States. Can you hear me in the back? Yeah? I feel like I'm echoing here. Okay. So once you get on the flight, of course, there's the economy seat that waits for you. Now, I don't travel first class. I would like to, but I don't. And I'm someone, I'm of a generally small physique, and I find these seats very uncomfortable. So I'm not quite sure how people with a regular physique or a larger physique deal with the economy seat to really be scrunched in. So it's just another part of this trip. Now, of course, there's also the really bad food that once you get into the air. Now, food has become just an afterthought. of flight. And most of the time you just try to get through without eating. It's just this aspect, you know, if you pay $5 for a sandwich, you get a soggy piece of bread with something that looks like meat between it, and you kind of just to satisfy that hunger and make it to the end of your flight. So food has really become an afterthought of this whole travel in the United States. And of course, even if you were to get something good, you can't usually enjoy it because of the turbulence. And on this particular flight, the stewards and stewardesses had to sit down. The food was on the floor by the end of the flight, and it was just a disaster. So finally, when you arrive at your destination, of course, because airports are never in any convenient proximity to the city, you have to take the obligatory cab ride, which is another, 40 minutes, 35 minutes, something like that. And it's also another $40 or so to get there. So that adds, in general, to your whole flight. Now, altogether, my travel time from Chicago to St. Louis was 5 hours. I'm being generous here because actually it was more like 5.5 hours or something like that. So just want to think for a moment, just compare this to what it's like to travel by Shinkansen in Japan. And I know a lot of people have been to Tokyo, so how many of you have actually traveled on the bullet train? Oh, good. So I'm speaking to a crowd that knows this. Okay, so let's start with what it's like to travel on the Shinkansen. The Shinkansen is bullet train. I'll use that word just because it's easier. To start with, this is what a Shinkansen looks like. And it looks almost like a rocket on wheels. And it almost actually feels like a rocket on wheels. And it's just this very smooth experience. It's very sleek technology. Already it has a kind of aesthetic appeal from the outside that the airplane, I don't think, quite matches. Now, one of the most remarkable aspects of the Shinkansen service in Tokyo that I think we could easily reproduce here in the United States is that there's a train literally every 10 minutes. So there's really no situation where you'll arrive at the train station and have to wait around more than a couple minutes for a train. And if there's a train, 10 minutes or sometimes even less than 10 minutes. And it's come to the fact that they've eliminated the waiting room because there's just no reason to wait around. So that's one aspect. The whole issue of delays is just taken out. And of course there are sometimes that the service stops because of earthquakes or other things, but that's very rare. It's very infrequent that happens. Now, once you get inside the Shinkansen, I know this looks a little bit like an airplane, but it's very different. And I want to underscore the difference here just in terms of leg room, in terms of the ability to move around. The seats are wide. It's a totally different kind of experience. And this is economy, just to give you a sense that this is already a very different kind of atmosphere than what we see inside the economy of flights in the United States. And this is, of course, this is a newer train. And you can see this is just it looks like a very comfortable and almost inviting atmosphere. But I think the really remarkable, or the part of the Shinkansen that is almost the high art form, is the food experience. You know, Japan has brought the aspect of food and travel up to what I think is almost a high art. And before you board your train, you have to literally pass a gauntlet of sellers in this station that have what is the most remarkable assortment of various boxed lunches. Now, each one is sort of an aesthetic treat in itself. It's beautifully arranged in terms of colors, in terms of the different vegetables, and it's almost everybody buys one of these before you get on the train. So it's the whole aspect of food and travel, I think, is a very important thing. It's not an afterthought like we've made it in the United States. And here's just another example of the different kinds of stuff that you can buy on the train before you enter the train system. Probably the most enjoyable part of this journey is sitting down, having a cold beer and your little box lunch and looking out the window as this scenery flies by. And I think that's something that you look forward to. It's a part of the journey that's really enjoyable. It's not like that horrible sandwich that you get here. Now, all in all, the trip from Tokyo to Osaka was 2.5 hours. Now, the difference here is not just time. The trip was actually really enjoyable, too. And I think the people who have been on the Shinkansen can say that it's a totally different experience than what you have in the flights in the United States. So I think that when it comes down to the question of can we do high-speed rail in the United States, I think it's almost a no-brainer kind of proposition, especially in places like the East Coast, where it makes complete sense to connect our cities like New York and Pittsburgh, or to connect Washington and Boston. It makes sense to do this, and I think that if we have the opportunity to build one of these systems, we should definitely do that in the United States. And I don't think we need to actually invent the technology, because it's there. We just need to perhaps borrow it from Japan. And I don't mean to be a PR representative for Japanese train systems, but I do think that this is something that we could learn here in the United States. Okay, so I've told you about the wonderful aspects of train service in Japan. Now I'm going to switch, if I can move this a little bit. I'm going to switch tracks, as it were. I have to use that metaphor. And I'm going to talk a little bit more closely to what my research actually looks at. And this is more of an abstract question around our relationship with technology, and specifically about our relationship with technology in a global condition. And the train system for me is it's a way to understand human and technological interface. So my interest in Japan, particularly in the train system, is less so about a Japanese-ness or a Japanese technology. It's more about how the train asks us to think, how the train gets us to think about what is technology, what is the machine. That's why I call my work, for example, I call it the anthropology of the machine, which should become clear in a little bit why that's so. So in moving to this part, I want to ask the question, or propose the question of, what does Tokyo's commuter train network tell us about our relationship with technology and our contemporary global condition? Now, this may seem like a large question to ask of a train system. I mean, after all, it is just a train system. It's just about transporting people from one end to the other. So it may seem that we're asking too much of the train system. But I think that we're not asking too much of the train system, and the reason is that the train has a very special relationship with modernity and technology. And the reason for that relationship, or the special relationship that it has with modernity and technology, is that the train is really the prototypical machine, right? So what do I mean when I say this, that the train is the prototypical machine? I mean that it's the prototypical machine because the railroad was the first machine ensemble. That's sort of a different way of just thinking about what the difference between a machine and a machine ensemble. By machine ensemble, I mean two things. I mean, first of all, that it's a massive and complex assemblage of interacting human and technological components. Now, this is very different than the technology that preceded it. And what I mean here is that the experience with technology within the machine ensemble is different from the experience of technology with just a single technological item. The proximity of the atmosphere, the environment of experience with the technological element is confined to the proximity of that element. Whereas the experience with the machine ensemble is spread out over a vast network. You're not experiencing one technological element, you're experiencing many technological elements in relationship to one another. So a machine ensemble puts you in a different kind of, not just relationship with one technology, but with technology in general. It puts you into really a networked relationship with technology. And the important part of this is that this machine ensemble, the train is the first machine ensemble, really transformed in an unprecedented way our relationship with time, space, and nature. Right? This is why I'm calling the train the prototypical machine and the prototypical machine ensemble. But let me back up a little bit and explain more concretely or detailed what exactly this means. It's sort of a precursor to our look at the Tokyo commuter train network. Now, to think about this, in order to have a train system, we need to take a natural environment like this, which is mountains or whatnot, and we need to radically alter it to make it to look just like something like this in order for a train system to actually move across it. The train was really the first technology that required this kind of vast reworking of the natural environment. Prior to that, horse and buggy or any kind of locomotion that was prior to the machine could follow the contours of the environment, could actually move on the roads that existed there, or roads could be sort of haphazardly made. But the train can't do that. A train requires a very specific kind of environment to travel, right? So what needs to happen for environment, like we said, to turn from this to something that can support a train network or a machine ensemble? First of all, we have to get rid of the contours of the land. We have to completely restructure or reformat the land. So we have to take these curves and the winding aspects of the road, and we have to turn them into a straight line. Because, of course, trains like to travel on straight lines. They don't like to travel up very much, they don't like to travel down very much, and they don't like to go around curves. They like straight lines. So once we have that, once we've taken those mountainous ranges and we've reduced them to a single straight line, we're ready to lay our tracks. Right? So we lay our tracks, and now we have tracks, and we're ready for the train. And already we have a different kind of relationship than we've had with locomotive technology that preceded the train, because trains are bound to tracks. Unlike a cart and buggy that can move around a road, or even a boat that can travel in a river, a train is bound to a specific track and can't move from that track. So there's already a specific kind of relationship there. Once we have the train, we create a certain environment around it. We have to create stations. The stations are places for people to get on, they're destinations. But stations are also very important for fuel and water, at least in the beginning, for train systems. So this is fine. We have our train moving on our track, and everything's great with that. The system, however, becomes remarkably more complicated the moment we put another train on the track. And of course, we don't want the trains to bump into one another. So in order to make this system, allow the system to work, what has to happen is we need to segment the space that we've already created. So we've created a straight line for the train to travel. Now we're going to take that straight line and we're going to segment it into discrete units. And each unit is going to be demarcated by a signal system. So we're already restructuring the environment in a totally different kind of way, a totally different sort of time, and a totally different kind of spatial experience. And on top of that, of course, we need to put a communication system. And this becomes, of course, in most contemporary theory, the telegraph system that usually accompanied the emergence of railroads was often thought of in terms of the nervous system of the arteries of the train system. So we've created a system for locomotion of things, and now we've created a communication system on top of that. So we're creating really two kinds of networks that are existing side by side. Of course, we can't just have trains traveling on the track in any which way that they want. We have to create some kind of coherent movement, and we have to treat this entity that's spread out over vast territories. We have to treat it as a single entity with all the parts moving in synchronicity. This is an important part. So in order to do that, we create what's called a centralized command that oversees the distribution of all movement within this giant machine ensemble. And the point here is that the train was really the first technology to do this. This was the first machine ensemble. Okay, so up until now I've talked about all the spatial reconfigurations that happened with the advent of the train system. But perhaps the most important change that happens with the train system is the introduction of standardized time. Now this is across the world, and this is a story that we hear often with trains, that with the introduction of the trains, we see the annihilation of local times that preceded the train. The time was kept by local communities that were responsible for their own timekeeping. And that doesn't work with trains because trains have to move across vast territories, and the time has to be synchronized from one territory to the other. So with the introduction of the train system, we see a standardization of time. So we have a new time experience and we have a new spatial experience. It all happens around the introduction of this machine ensemble. Of course, after this, we need to introduce, I should say that none of this moves without the introduction of capital. So capital makes all this move, and the system itself is also intended to produce capital. And this creates all sorts of incentives to create places for people to go with trains. It creates department stores that end up being at the terminals. And the system actually produces capital at the same time that it moves on capital. So it's all these new relations of capitals that are part of this new machine ensemble. The end result is that the machine ensemble creates an entirely new kind of environment that has been technologically altered. And we can call this environment a kind of technosocial environment. You know, the important part of this is, and the reason I've taken so much time in this, is because the environment that's created, this new technosocial environment, comes to be felt of as the natural environment. And once we've created this environment, this technosocial environment, there is no going back. We live in a technological world. To think of a world without that technology, without this relationship of time and space, is absurd at this point. We've already totally restructured our planet. We've restructured our experience of time and space. So the train really brings that. It's really the first kind of technology that creates this environment. And I'm calling this environment a technological condition. Right? This is sort of the overall condition of this technology. Now, I think the technological condition is felt best by the traveler looking from the train window. And just to give you a sort of moment here, we should have sound. Now, when you're looking from this is actually from a Shinkansen in Japan. When you're looking from the train window, the world that you see outside the window is mediated by this apparatus that extends over a vast territory. And you can see elements of the apparatus moving outside your window. And your world, your perspective of the world has suddenly been changed to a certain kind of speed and movement that was unthinkable prior to the train. Okay? So we needed to set this up in order to turn to the Tokyo commuter train network. And I want you to remember all of this, or to think about this, as we turn now to look more at the specificities of Tokyo's commuter train network. So let's start with what the network looks like. All right. This is a slide of Tokyo's above and below ground system. And as you can see, it's really a dense web of interconnecting lines that cover a vast amount of territory. You can travel from any one end of this system to any other end of the system pretty much within an hour and a half. Meaning that there's a train to switch over every couple minutes, every station that you go to. Now, life in this city really revolves around this system. To live in Tokyo is to live on and by the train. So the train sets the tenor of life, and all activity really happens around the train stations. And it's to the point where you ask someone in Tokyo where they're from, and they'll tell you what train line they live on, rather than the actual neighborhood that they live in, because that's the only thing that really makes sense. And of course, then people start swapping stories of, you know, my train line does this, what's your train line like? So there's a whole sort of culture that exists around this train system. Now, this system transports something like 20 million people per day, which is, just to give you an idea of our Chicago network, I have to put this up for comparison, transports something like 1.8 million people per day. And that's not to say, I mean, it's a network at work. It does what it needs to do to some extent. But it's nothing like the kind of vast network that we see in Tokyo. And even a more significant network like New York, and I think last I checked was something like 10.5 to 11 million people per day. It's also a significant network, but doesn't transport anything like the amount that Tokyo's network transports. Now, when people know something about Tokyo's commuter train system, they usually know two things. First of all, they know that the trains are incredibly crowded. And second of all, they know that the system is incredibly punctual. Now, these two things go together in an interesting way that I hope will become clear as we move along here. But in understanding what's unique to this network, I think we need to distinguish between a crowded commuter train and a Tokyo's packed commuter train. Now, these are two very different things. Crowded commuter trains we have, it's an urban paradigm that we have throughout the world. I mean, every city that we know has a crowded commuter train. But a packed commuter train in Tokyo is a very specific phenomenon. And in order to begin to understand what is specific to this phenomenon, I think it's best to look at how you say packed commuter train in Japanese, which is main densha. Now, to take apart this word, I think will give us a better understanding of what's specific to a packed commuter train in Japan. 4 characters, as you see. Now, the first character means full. That's all it means. It's full. You could use it like full tank of gas, full whatever, full auditorium, but it means full. The second character means personnel, person, or member. And the third and fourth character means train. Right? So by saying main densha, what we're really referring to, we're referring to a train that is filled to capacity and cannot take any more commuters. All right? Now, this is different from a crowded train, which is only referring to a crowd on a train. Right? A packed train, a Main-Dencher, refers specifically to an issue of space and capacity. Right? It's a train that cannot take any more, and yet does. Right? Now, this system was born of the late post-war, around 1950s, 1957 to be exact. And of course, there were crowded trains in Japan from the early years of the 20th century. But the specific pack train only happens around the late 1950s, as I said. And it happens around an economic shift that causes a huge economic boom, that causes a huge demographic shift whereby people flow literally from the rural areas into Tokyo, and it just overwhelms the system. It overwhelms the structural capacity of the system, of the technology there. And this is just a scene from one of the train lines. I don't know if you can see it so well. It's a scene from one of the platforms in Tokyo in the 1950s. And you can see there's a sort of chaos here, and yet there's also a sort of order to it, where you see people are actually lined up on the platform. And this happens up to today too in Tokyo. You'll see people lined up on the platform in anticipation of where the train doors are going to be when the train stops. And that's part of the whole social protocol of the whole, if I can use the word training, that one needs to know in order to ride the train. So the question is, what was it like to ride the train at this time? What was it like to be in a packed train in the 1950s? And I think in order to answer this question, it's best just to show you what it was like. And for here, I want to refer to a clip from a movie which is appropriately named Main-Dencher, the packed train. And in this clip, what you're going to see is you're going to see the protagonist waking up in the morning in his dormitory. He's actually a worker at a beer factory, and he's the accountant at a beer factory. And he's going to be taking his first packed train to work that morning. And what's interesting is that you'll see the moment he leaves his apartment, everybody else in the complex, in the dormitory where this young man is living, will leave at exactly the same time. And this speaks, I think, to the kind of synchronicity that we talked about, that becomes part of the time-space experience that's introduced with trains. And I'm going to try to dim the lights here. Can I do that? You can see. Can you see that? Okay. Right. So I wish I could tell you that that was an exaggeration, but unfortunately it's not. I mean, after all, this movie is a parody where the pack trainer is really kind of a Bavarian instantiation of the iron cage, is a system whereby rationality becomes so efficient to the point that it becomes irrational. But this is not, as you'll see from a clip that I'll show you shortly, is not at all different from what the contemporary experience of the pack train is in Tokyo. So I want to come back here when talking about the train to this idea of capacity, and that we said that the train, that what's specific to the pack train in Tokyo is that it's an environment that is existing beyond capacity, that it's not supposed to take on any more commuters, and yet the system does, and it has to. So what do I mean exactly by beyond capacity? And this is a word that I want you to be able to take away from this talk today. Beyond capacity means two things. Let's start with it. It means two things. It means, first of all, that it's part of a system that should not work and yet does. And because of that, because it's a system that should not work yet does, it also means that the system is perpetually on the verge of systemic collapse. Right? So those are two aspects of it, two aspects of this existence beyond capacity that's the contemporary packed train in Tokyo. Now there are two parts to the beyond capacity that's specific to Japan's train system. And that is that Japan's train system, Japan's commuter train network, is first of all, it's what's called a high density system. And by high density, we mean the number of trains per hour. Now during rush hour, that's one train every 1 minute and 58 seconds. But you think that's pretty amazing. Every 1 minute and 58 seconds. It means literally that the moment a train pulls out, another train pulls in. And it fills up and trains pull out. And the trains move constantly. They're never stopped. If they stop, the system collapses. Right? And the high capacity is the second aspect of what beyond capacity. The high capacity refers to the number of commuters. Now during rush hour, the number of commuters is 200 to 230% beyond capacity. And no system in the world operates at this level. All right, so two aspects. It's a high density, it's a high capacity system. I want to talk a little bit about more about the high capacity aspect of it, what it means to be in a train car that's packed to 230% beyond capacity. Now, if we do a little bit of the math, if we think about this, that means that a train car with a maximum capacity of 140 to 160 people is actually carrying over 300 people that are crammed into that one space. Right? Now, if we think that there are 10 train cars per train, that means that there are 3,000 people per train. Right? That means also inside the train, but that's also referring to people on the platform. So if a train is delayed a minute and is delayed, it doesn't come every 1 minute and 58 seconds, it ends up coming every 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Already the platform has crowded from hundreds of people, it can become thousands of people. And once it becomes that point, that many people, commuters can start falling onto the tracks. So the system has to be able to accommodate that amount of people in a continuous sort of flow. So if we think about what high density and high capacity really are, high density refers to the question of how do you operate trains at 1 minute and 58 seconds. Now this, I think, is really just a technological challenge. This is a challenge of getting the brakes to work, of getting the system to work, of getting trains close to one another without bumping into one another. But as opposed to that, high capacity is the question of how do you get commuters to endure the unendurable condition of 200% beyond capacity. Whereas high density is a technological challenge, high capacity is specifically a social challenge. Right? And the reason that these two things have to work together is because either one of them can derail the entire system. If a train doesn't arrive in 1 minute and 58 seconds, that can cause a delay that will metastasize through the whole network. And if there's some kind of social situation, some kind of argument or fight among commuters in these packed trains, that can also derail the whole system. So we're talking about a technosocial environment that has to work together. Right? So what exactly does it mean to endure the congestion of 200% beyond capacity? And I think for this, it's helpful to refer to an illustration that's put out by train companies. It says that at 100% capacity, you can grab onto the hanging strap and everything's fine and you're nice inside the train. At 150% capacity, you're shoulder to shoulder with the other passengers and yet you still are able to read the newspaper. At 180% capacity, the newspaper has to be folded into fourths. People who have been to Tokyo and have seen, usually it's salarymen who are reading the paper folded into fourths, I don't know how they do it. I think you have to just learn origami or something when you're young. But it's a tactic where they fold and they'll actually be able to read the sections. And I've tried it and it turns into a mess. But that's how you do it. You fold into fourths so you're not spread out like that. You're actually reading it like that. 200% above capacity, 200% capacity, the situation is particularly oppressive. But an obstinate reader may still be able to read the weekly magazine. And it all comes down to reading, which is very important. At 200% beyond capacity, reading becomes impossible. As the train moves, your bodies are so packed together that you're all forced to sway and move together. This is a tremendous strain on your body. You're trying to sort of maintain your stance, and you're being pushed by this mass of bodies around you. And you're totally immobilized. You can't move your arms and you can't move your legs. You're just packed in there. Now, I thought I would show you, just to sort of emphasize the point, that what we saw with the film clip is not actually different from anything that we see in contemporary Tokyo. I thought I would show you a very short clip of what it's like in Tokyo today. Now this is, I turned off the volume because it just doesn't work. It's just, you don't think that everybody's going to get on the train, and yet they do. If you go to Tokyo, if you put in, and this I just took from YouTube, and this is what people go to Tokyo to see, apparently. Amazingly enough, they're able to close the doors. Now, people ride these trains to work every day for their entire careers. So people who work at a company for 30 years, this means every day for 30 years they ride this train to work. And amazingly enough, it works. So the train is able to move on. It pulls out of the station. And that was actually pretty quick. If you think about it, that was in less than 30 seconds, I think, that they actually managed to get everybody on that train. So we're talking about a kind of interaction here between the technology and not complacency, but a willingness to exist within the system. What does it feel like to be inside that train? Arms caught among people, and the compressed bodies have been broken, and people faint for lack of oxygen. I actually fainted on one of these trains, by the way. But you can't fall because you don't fall because you can't fall, because the bodies around you are holding you up. The level of congestion is that you really feel that your internal organs are being crushed, and you can't expand your lungs in order to take a full breath. By the time you arrive at work, you're totally exhausted, and they say the level of stress is more than that of a fighter pilot in the midst of battle. Now, a fighter pilot actually has less stress because they can somewhat control the situation, whereas someone on the train they lose all control of the situation. So it's a level of stress that's a kind of combat stress. You imagine 30 years of work, and every day it's that. The question is, why and how do commuters put up with the situation? Unfortunately, the answer is very simple. And the answer lacks the kind of profundity that I think we would expect. But it comes down to the simple issue of that they feel that there is no choice. There is no choice but to ride this train every day, to exist in a system of beyond capacity. That to live in the city is to live with the conditions of a system that operates beyond capacity. That's what they feel, that there is just no choice. Now, the condition of beyond capacity, I think, has something to tell us about our relationship with technology and the global condition, about our technosocial relationship, of how we've restructured the environment and the world that we've created. To operate beyond capacity, I think, is to function beyond the means of our environment. And I think Tokyo's commuter train network is simply one particular example of a general condition of living beyond capacity. And by living beyond capacity, again, we mean living on a system that should not work and yet does, and we mean also living on the edge of a systemic, which would be environmental collapse. And I don't think we have to look very far to find a similar combination of the technological and social conditions of living beyond capacity in cultures throughout the world. I think every culture has this. Every technosocial environment, which is our environment, has a situation of living beyond capacity. And I don't think we need to look far to hear the same simple reason of why we put up with this, the same reason lacking profundity of why we live in the situation of beyond capacity, why we're willing to accept that. And I think, quite simply, it's we tell ourselves that there is no choice. Thank you. So there's time now for questions, and I will take any questions about, yeah.
I would think these conditions preclude obesity. Obesity. How could an obese person operate?
Well, the food is better.
I mean, in that crowded condition, I mean, you'd be...
Yeah, no, I mean, if people are generally, I mean, the amount of stress, you're burning calories on the train anyway. It's a great diet system if people want to do that, but it's a stressful environment, and that's one issue that people do have in Tokyo is the amount of stress, and the stress starts with riding these trains every day. And the city's not entirely stressed out, but there's a stress level, I think, that is higher than living in the United States.
Thanks so much, Michael. This is amazing material. So you're an anthropologist, you're not a policy person or a planner, but I'm going to ask you the obvious question. So you gave us two examples. One is the beautiful convenience of the bullet train, which I guess we would all love to travel to, say, Champaign, using that. Yeah. And the other one is the nightmare of the commuter train. If you were part of the administration and money, were possible, what are the lessons here for us? I mean, you said that our commuter train is actually quite underused. Would you advocate more? But obviously not this, right?
Well, there's a whole other part of this discussion that I didn't give you just because it was too complicated to do this quickly. But the system, I don't think we're anywhere near the danger of creating a commuter train network like Tokyo with that those levels of crowds. I don't think we're going to have that problem in the United States. I think we have a similar problem on our highways. And we have a system of working beyond capacity. I mean, just drive the highways, drive 94 into the city, out of the city every day. That's a system that's on the verge of collapse. That's on a system that's beyond capacity, and just the intense resources that are required to keep that system up. I think that we could install a commuter train network that works to every 1 minute and 58 seconds. If we had a train, they wouldn't be packed. It would actually work quite nicely. And one of the remarkable things that I didn't get into today, just because it's just a little bit too complicated, is that this system, the Tokyo system, actually exploits recent advances in robotic engineering. So where I explained to you before, where you have a central command that oversees the whole system, the way it actually works in Tokyo today is the system is self-governing. So each aspect, each train governs itself, and you don't have a central command anymore. And these are the same principles of artificial life that are being used for your iPhones, that are being used for all the ATM systems in the world. So it's really a cutting-edge system that if we were to create that here in Chicago, I don't think we're anywhere near the danger of creating this kind of environment. I don't think people would put up with it. People were taught to ride trains from the very early years of life in Japan, and I don't think that people are willing to exist in 230% beyond capacity. But that we're willing to sit on the highway for 2 hours every day to get to work, well, maybe it's just as bad. So, I don't know. But I think that it's a no-brainer to put in a high-speed rail system. It makes sense. I think, should we go to the, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the talk. And just kind of going off of what you were talking about before, how to ask this? How far do you think America has to come to be ready for something like a bullet train or be ready for a high speed?
Technologically, we're right there. Ideologically, we're far away.
Right, but in our social environment, because we have this whole idea of we can sit on the highway for hours and just.
Well, I mean, it's also the point that we can't even get the government to invest in anything these days. I mean, with infrastructure, and I mean, what we were able to do in the Roosevelt administration by rebuilding our infrastructure, rebuilding this country, I think that we could do this easily. I think that America would just need the desire to make it happen, and a reconceptualization of what government is supposed to be for the people, and actually to not move in this direction of complete anti-governmentality, which has been the latest trend, to actually think about that governments can do things like help the nation build a high-speed train system. I think that our biggest problem is ideological and not technological. So we have to get over that sort of strange fundamentalism that seems to be gripping the country.
Thank you for the lecture. One of the questions I had was, we talked about the technological challenges, the social challenges, and how it's kind of like we have no choice, and there's a focus on control. We control our environment even though we can't. Japan, the islands are very volatile in terms of their volcanoes, tsunamis, earthquakes. So there's this uncontrollability part of it. And I was wondering what the social and technological response was to those uncontrollable events.
Yeah, if you had asked me this before March of last year, I probably would have had a different answer because of the recent events in Fukushima with the nuclear disaster there. Strangely enough, the train system, as opposed to the nuclear system, has many, many different kinds of safety mechanisms that work together with the environment. As you say, the land shakes there all the time. So embedded in their train system, embedded in all the land where the tracks are laid, are mechanisms that completely shut down the system with any kind of shaking. So a couple years ago, there was a major earthquake in Niigata, and the train, the Shinkansen, actually went off the track. But because they had anticipated that it would go off the track if the ground shook, they had devised a mechanism to grab the train on the side to keep it from derailing entirely. So there's a lot of thought that went into something like that. So there is, technologically speaking, there's an ability to deal with the very unstable environment. And at the same time, if you look at the nuclear power industry, it's a disaster. A lot of the what we're learning is that proper studies were never done, or studies were done and then they were lied about in order to say that the land was more stable than it actually is. So one industry seems to be doing fine, the other industry seems to be a complete disaster. So I hope that answers a little bit of the question. Yeah. I don't know who has the microphone. Yeah.
I did one of those commutes for a couple of years on the KO line to the western suburb.
Sure.
For one, my experience was that these really, really packed trains, it's the morning. There
Right.
isn't, because the evening rush hour is so spread out, partly because so many people work so late. It's spread out, so the evening's never so bad. My commutes in the mornings, they would probably be at 200, 220% capacity. I'm really tall, so I could, and especially then in the 80s, I could just read my newspaper kind of over people's heads.
And lay it on someone's head, which is very nice.
But my question is, the 80s was way before all these little handheld electronic things you could read. I'm thinking that now, with all these, little, kind of iPhone sorts of things to read, I wonder if that greatly sort of improves the experience. A lot more people can read the newspaper. I'm wondering.
Yeah, the iPhone, that's one of the reasons why the internet cell phone, the smartphone that we have in the United States, started in, I think, in 1996 in Japan, way before they had it here in the United States. I think my microphone. The reason that they brought that phone out in the United States, in Japan, particularly to be used with one hand, because they thought people with one hand would be holding the strap and the other hand would be able to use the phone. And what the phone really did, it gave each commuter a private window, a private train window, because you can't see the window when you're packed in at 230% beyond capacity. And that window doesn't open to landscapes. It opens rather onto sort of private vistas of fantasy, love, and camaraderie. And I think that changed the experience a little bit. It allows people to sort of enter into these little cocoons where you're on the train, but you have no proximity or presence with the people around you. So you're experiencing a space and yet totally shut off from the people around you, and yet in correspondence with thousands of other people on the network. So you see with that, these two networks really coming together. I think what you see with that is really what we saw before with the train, the telegraph system that comes up around the train in the slides that I showed you. We see yet another kind of communication system that's interwoven with this locomotive mechanical system of moving bodies. And these two networks function together in a way that I think is very unique to Japan and has changed the training experience considerably. from that initial point of what you do inside the train to your whole interface with the system is now done through these cell phones that allow you to tell you where you are. They act as tickets, and so it's a very interesting part of it. Yeah.
Michael, you mentioned that over here. You mentioned that the stress level of the people is. Sorry.
Who's talking?
I'm over here. You mentioned that the stress level of people is like that of a fighter pilot. Now,
Yeah.
is it possible that it's not stress, that people are just numb? And how do we determine which one it is?
It's a good point. The material that I've read has specifically talked about stress, but I think that people are also numb. As I was saying here before, you can't relate to the people that you're with. And one of the things that stands out about the packed trains in the morning is that they're deadly quiet. Nobody says a word. I mean, you can hear people breathing. You could hear, it's strange to think about 300 people packed into a space that's made for half that amount, and yet not even a single sound arising from those bodies. And part of that is that you can't talk to someone, first of all, when they're pressed up against your face. But also you can't really relate to those people around you. Even if you were to talk to them, and people tend to ride the same train every day at the same time, so they know everybody around them. And they know their faces. People say that, when so-and-so, that face doesn't show up, I begin to wonder, are they okay? So you know them, and yet you don't know them. It's sort of, as I was saying, it's a proximity without presence with these people. So I think, in a way, people do shut down. There is a kind of numbness. But that stress also of just feeling that your body's being compressed, and you're being crushed, I think is also the other part of it. So numbness and stress, I think they go together in a very unusual way in that environment.
So are bicycles a choice in Tokyo? And I just came back from Beijing this summer, where you used to see thousands and thousands of people on bikes, and they're not riding bikes anymore. They're switching to their train system. What happened to bikes?
They're coming back. There's been a sort of resurgence of bicycling in Tokyo in the last, I think, 5 to 6 years, that they're trying to get people to take bikes instead of the train. And one of the problems is also that there's just nowhere to lock the bike in the city. So, a lot of times there are large, what are they called? Places, large areas to lock your bike around the stations, but they fill up so fast. So it's just it's one aspect of it. And people are starting, though, to bring their bikes to work and carry them up the steps and put them there. And people are starting to have nicer bikes. For many years, men and women would ride the same kind of bike that we see here that are specifically for women in the United States, and those heavy iron structures. But now, recently, people are starting to ride more of the mountain bikes and lighter bikes. So there's a new biking trend that's coming back, and also sort of fitness and reducing stress. So it is changing.
We have time for one last question.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I know there's not very much to compare, but in Chicago, children riding the trains to school is a problem. In the images that you showed us, they were all adults. So do young people use the trains to go to school during the morning, and how do they fit into this? And the second thing, in Chicago, every time you get on the train, there's an announcement, please do not lean on the doors. So do they have some kind of mechanism that guarantees that those doors will not open with all those people packed against them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Don't lean on the doors between stations? So just in general, don't lean on the doors? Yeah? Okay. Well, the first part of the question, children do ride the trains. Not children, but junior high school students and high school students will ride the train. And it's particularly a problem for young girls on the train. There's been a lot of issues with groping, which is a real big problem in Tokyo. And they've made efforts to create trains that are for women only, or train cars that are for women only. But it is a problem, and I think that when you ride the commute in the morning, it depends on where you are, but inside the city you'll see mostly adults, but anywhere around the suburbs, where trains are also just as packed. You will see just as many high school students and junior high school students on the train. So that whole riding the packed train is part of the life from school age up and all the way through your career at work. So it's part of that. As part of leaning on the doors, I think there was one incident that I can think of that the doors actually opened, but the doors, from what I know, they don't open. So the system is just at this level where a single technological malfunction can derail, literally, not derail actually the train, but it creates such chaos in the city. I mean, if you think that there's a train every 1 minute and 58 seconds, if you have a delay of 2 minutes, then you have to cancel the train. That means 3,000 people have to fit on the next train, and where there already are 3,000 people. So you can't, the system has to work. So you have those safety mechanisms pretty well thought out. If that answers the question.